Okay, today we have K7000 Repair-A-Thon chassis number 3, and this one is in pretty dire straits. I did have to clean it before working on it, and after cleaning it and going over it off camera, I noticed a number of issues. Most notably, the remote board is missing. So this is a K7000 that has one of these remote boards that has the long one with the redundant vertical size. And then it has the vertical position and a redundant brightness pot and horizontal position. So this is just how I pulled it out of the box, and it's missing the remote board. But I do have a whole box of remote boards, and it just so happens I have numerous of these boards here. And when I mean numerous, when I say numerous, I mean numerous. So we are going to use one of these, and let's these are notorious for having cracked solder joints on the headers here, so let's see if we can find one that's not, well, I'll have to just probably reflow it anyway, but so I do want to mention that this isn't actually needed. So if you wanted to just remove all these wires and reinstall a horizontal position pot and a vertical position pot and just have all the pots on the actual chassis, you could do that. You can take this completely off and just replace the two missing pots and be fine, because this has a redundant vertical size pot and a redundant black level pot. So these two pots are actually on the board. There's a brightness pot right here, and there is a vertical brightness pot here and a vertical size pot here. So these two pots here are here as well. Black level is actually referred to as brightness on this one, but black level and vertical size are redundant, so it's like an extra boost of vertical size and an extra boost of black level. But horizontal position and vertical position, you can actually install them on the chassis, remove this whole harness, and it'll work just fine. I think that's what someone did with this one. And it's also important to note that this has to plug in this way. This connector can plug in this way, or it can plug in this way. If you've got one of these with the remote board like this, it has to plug in like this. If you plug it in backwards, it won't work, and you could possibly damage the chassis. So it has to plug in like this. So we'll just grab one of these at random and make sure we get one that's not all damaged or broken. That one seems okay. And I guess we'll just have to reflow these header pins before we test it. But there we go. So we'll set that back aside. So that was issue number 1. Oh, okay. Issue number 2 is the power wires here. The AC input are supposed to route through here, and there is a kind of a holder that is normally mounted to the side of the frame here. Well, it's completely missing. And this is supposed to all be zip tied together here. So I can re-zip tie that, and I'll probably have to steal this little holder thing from another donor chassis, which isn't a big deal. So that's problem number 2. Problem number 3 is the neck board. I noticed that this particular transistor was shoved way over, and when I tried to move it back over, the solder is completely broken. The solder joint here is completely broken, as you can see. So we'll have to fix that. And I think this just broke, actually. Yep. The center pin on this transistor broke. I don't know if you can see that. But that's okay, we can fix that too, and that's not a big deal. But that was what, issue number 3. Number 4 is that just like, oh no, that's the other one. Okay, disregard. There's another one of these in the box over here that has a bunch of corroded neck pots, just like the second one was that I just posted. So maybe was that the first one? That might have been the first one. I forget. It's been so long. So we have the wires here loose. We had the missing remote board. We've got this broken transistor on the neck. That's number 3. Number 4 is we are missing a fuse. So that's an indication of something shorted. And then number 5 is this cap in here by the flyback is bulging right there. That's because somebody put a 16-volt cap in here. It's going to be hard for you to see, but trust me, it's supposed to be a 25 volt cap at a minimum, 25 volt 1000, and someone put a 16 volt 1000 in there. So I'm pretty sure this is bulging and about to explode because it's a too low reading of voltage, not because there's an actual problem on the chassis. So yeah, we got a bulging cap. I lost count. Is that issue number 6, 5, 6? If we continue on, issue number 7 or 8, we've got a missing, I think this might have been left underwater as well, because we got a bunch of missing solder mask here that's all not rusted, but it's exposed trace, copper trace. We have R101 is completely out of the circuit. Someone tried to repair it, but they weren't so successful. Right here, it's not even connected to anything. This is all burned up and it's not connected to the trace. Then there's the jumper here that's not even connected to the R101. And then the trace here is busted off too. If I move this around, the whole trace is, the trace is busted off the pad. So that's issue number what, 8, 7, 8, 9, I forget. Then we have the HOT has a busted leg. Somebody has replaced the HOT and put all the compound known to man on here behind it. And when they did that, they decided to go ahead and bust the pad here. So this is completely loose from the trace. So I don't know if that's issue number 10 or not. I lost count, but doesn't matter. I'm sure there's a number of other issues, but I think that's about it. We've got the HOT with the broken pad, the completely messed up pad and the trace here for R101, the missing mask for the bottom, the wires. I have to remove half of this. I mean, it's just coated, absolutely coated. That is not necessary. We got the bulging cap, and we had the missing remote board. We had the broken transistor on the neck, all kinds of stuff. So it's been capped, obviously, but whoever did it put the wrong rating of cap in here for that one. So, I mean, overall, it cleaned up very nice. It looks brand new. I mean, I cleaned it in the sink and everything like I normally do for these, and it looks brand spanking new. However, we have all these issues to tackle. So now that we've got the remote board situation figured out, we can, I'm not really too worried about fixing the neck board just now. We'll start with the main board. So just to get this out of our way, we'll disconnect that and disconnect this and remove our focus wire. Oh, that's right, I forgot. I had to get a brand new socket for the neck. When I was cleaning this and examining it, trying to get parts ordered, I ordered a brand new socket for the neck because I almost forgot. Look at this. That's not good. So I found that too when I was inspecting the neck board after washing it. Yeah, so that's why we got a brand new one here. So that was another issue. And this ground wire is about to break off, so we'll have to fix that. Oh, man, I am forgetting all kinds of stuff. Another issue here is, look at this. I think this was running on a tube that was weak because they have wrapped this wire around the core here of the flyback, and they've ran it to the heater circuit on the neck board. So this is the heater pin. This is the heater voltage pin. I think, so these two pins are for the heater, I should say. So this is the ground. This is the main ground plane here, and this is the heater voltage. So they're running this wire wrapped around the core here, the ferrite core of the flyback, to the heater circuit, heater positive and then the ground. So they're inducing extra voltage onto the heater circuit to try and get extra life out of a weak tube. That's my hypothesis here. So when I'm going to leave this intact. I'm going to remove the wires and hook them back up, but I'm going to leave this intact. So when we go to test this, I want to see if removing this wire makes the image darken up, and I'll bet you that it will. And this is a mod to increase heater voltage, to increase the life of a weak tube, if you will. Kind of a poor man's rejuvenation. So that is something very interesting. I haven't come across this before in person, but I've seen it documented elsewhere. But that's what this is someone has ran a wire around here to increase the heater voltage. So that'll be interesting to see and test and figure out how that operates. But for now, we are just going to remove it. Okay, and that should free up our neck board. And we can get it out of the way here. In this tangled mess of jumbled wires, this is proving difficult. Okay, forgot to unhook the G2 wire. All right, so neck board's off, and okay, we can go ahead and probably just disconnect this for now. And now we have our main chassis. So what do we start with? Well, I think since we have a fuse that's missing, I'm almost positive that the reason the fuse blew is because the HOT is out of circuit by this broken pad. This is just, man, let's start by cleaning this. I just want to clean this here. I already washed this in the sink, but it got a little residue on it after I dried it off, so we'll clean this here. That'll give us a good starting point to start working on this. Okay. That's a bit better. Yeah, all of these joints are just super dull and not shiny whatsoever. I need to do another pass on this here. Let's do another pass here. Okay, that's better. Now, what do we start with? Well, I think we'll start with just testing components and kind of go from there. So the fuse is blown. So well, I assume the fuse was blown and that's why they robbed it or removed it, but we can go ahead and start with HOT. In our diode mode, we'll check the collector to the outer two pins, 0.47 and 0.47, so that's good. Critical safety cap will go diagonally here. And we don't read a voltage drop because this leg of the HOT is out of the circuit. We're just checking to make sure that it's not shorted, and it's not, and diagonal the other way. Oh, you know what? I'm backwards here, sorry. Negative on this lead, diagonal. I'm sorry, okay, so there's our 0.45 voltage drop. In the opposite way, 0.45, okay. I'm sorry, I had that backwards, that's why it was reading that way. I thought it was because the HOT's out of circuit, but anyway, I had the wires backwards, the leads backwards, okay. So HOT is okay, critical safety cap is okay. For the voltage regulator, pins 1 and 4, like this, should be a 0.15 voltage drop or so. And, yep, 0.146. And I think that will about do it on the bottom. Let's check D18. D18 is good. C36, make sure it's not, I'm sorry, C38. The width cap, C38, make sure it's not shorted. And it's not, okay. All right, well, let's go to the top here. Oh, I forgot, sorry. Let's go to R203, 103. 103, yeah, R103 should be 2.8 ohms. Yep. Okay, now R104 should be 15 ohms. $15.5, okay, that means our rectifier diodes are all good too. Again, if you're not familiar, if you read 15 ohms on here, then all of your rectifier diodes should be okay. If you read like 4 or 5 ohms on here, then one of your rectifier diodes is shorted. But since that reads 15, we're okay there. R101 should be about 5K in circuit. If I can get a good reading on it. Nope, I'll probably have to go back to the bottom side. 6.3. I've never. That's what it's supposed to read out of circuit. I've never seen one read that high in circuit. Oh, but I know why. Because it's not in circuit. The other leg here is not in the circuit because it's got that broken pad and the bad solder joints. So normally you'd read about 4.5 to 5K in circuit, but 6.3K is normal out of circuit, and that's what we read because it's not actually in circuit. So that's good. R101's okay. R88 should be 1.8K, and we get 1.8K. R96 should be 1.8K, and we get 1.8K. R97 should be 270 ohms, and we get 272. R89 should be 3.9K, and we get, can't get in there, 3.85. That's fine. I think that's it. Everything tests okay. So I think the reason, I think the fuse blew because maybe the HOT got shorted out for some reason, and when they replaced it, they damaged the pad and couldn't figure out why it wouldn't power on and kind of gave up. If R101 being out of circuit like that, it definitely will not power up. So that's another problem. Someone tried to fix it, but this is a victim of someone not knowing what they're doing. With all this bad rework and also putting the wrong rating of cap in here, causing it to bulge and possibly explode already. So I think what we'll start with is fixing the HOT, and the easiest way to do that would be to simply scratch away the trace, and then we can solder right to it. Let's remove some of this solder here first though. Oh, well, the whole pad just came off. That's fine. Because we can just do that. Bend this over like so. And then work a little magic here. Just like that. So that's fixed. Let's check these other traces here. Go to continuity mode, and that's fine. This one here, that's fine, but let's reflow it. Okay. And we'll do this one too. All right. Okay, so that fixes that. Now let's work on R101 here, this disaster. Let's completely remove this thing. Okay. Don't need that anymore. Man, this is pretty bad. We need to remove the resistor from there. We go. So I've just pulled the resistor out, and let's just clean this all up here. Is that a capacitor? Yeah, let's get, wait a minute, that is, yeah, let's just get this guy out of here too, because it's getting replaced also. Throw that in the garbage. Okay, now let's clean all this up here. so this is really what we're left with here. Can we make this work? I think that we can. So I want to remove R101 completely here. Man, this is bad. Look at that. Look how oxidized that pad is from the heat. When you just let these things go like this, it gets pretty rough. So I want to clean these legs here. Otherwise, there'll be nothing for the solder to stick to due to the oxidation. All right, hang on a second. All right, so I went to grab some actual sandpaper because this one's pretty bad. Okay, I think that should work. All right, so let's put this back in here now. While I clean off all of this, need to clean off all this fiberglass before it falls in my, or goes in my arm here. Okay, got that done. Now let's get this R101 back in here. Actually, you know what? Before I do that, I need to fix this mess over here. I'll bet you, you know what? I bet you that we don't have continuity on here either. I'll bet if we go from here on this big oxidized mess down to here, I bet we don't have continuity. Oh, we do. Well, that's a surprise. That's a surprise for sure. Okay. Well, that solder pad's actually not bad. Let's take that leg of R89 out of there and let's clean that up. Okay. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Yeah, it's actually not bad. But we need to fix that, so we will. Oh. Glad I did that. That's barely even hanging on there. Actually, no, it's probably fine, but we'll fix it. Okay, and there you go, just like that. So now we can put R89 back in, and let's clean the edge of that up a bit. Actually, I'm going to take this out of there because that's not... Oh man, jeez! Look at this one. Look at the other leg of R89. Look how oxidized that is. Gosh, good God. Yeah, but you can see that that was only actually in circuit by that little bit right there. Well, maybe you can't. There you go. So that little bit right there is all that was actually, half of the trace was not even in circuit. Actually, I don't even know if this would have had continuity. I bet you there's no continuity from here to there. I bet you it was all right there. This side to that side. Because all that oxidation right there, I doubt there was even continuity to this pad this way. So let's clean that up. Man, glad I took this out of there. All right, well, about empty on my pen here, but that should work. Now let's clean up the legs of R89 here. Yeah. That'll work. Okay, now I'll give you an example here from the other side why it's important to not just fix the pads, but you also really need to fix the legs on your component, because if the pads are oxidized, you know, it doesn't do you any good to fix the oxidized pads if you don't also fix the oxidized legs of your component. So we want to get all the old oxidized solder off of there, and then we want to use sandpaper here to kind of fix this. So if we were to that's better. This side is really bad there. My fiberglass pen is empty. I don't have another one, so we're doing this the old school method. The old way. Yes, yes. The old ones. The ones who programmed me, yes. Ruck, protect. Androids don't eat, Miss Chapel. Well, I would hope androids don't eat, Miss Chapel, but okay, I think that'll work. Set that aside. Now we can put R89 back in. And R101. Okay. Now, let's solder this puppy in here. Stay there, you. Okay, good. Now, beautiful. Okay. Beautiful. Now let's get this other side. Okay, and just for insurance, we're going to bridge that over just like so. Now for R101 here, let's push this down a bit. Doesn't need to stick out quite that far. That's good. And aren't you? Is there no pad there? I don't think there's a part of the pad's missing, and this is part of the unmasked PCB here. I don't like the way that looks, but that's about all I'm going to be able to get out of that. And why is that like that? Hang on one second here. Let's fix this. There we go. Okay. And I just don't like the way that this looks here. There we go. That's better. Okay. Awesome. All right, so now let's take this and bend this over like so. Where's my... All right. Nice. Okay. Now we need to get that cap, and I'm pretty sure that is a 25 volt 47 if memory serves. Actually, I'm 100% positive that's a 47. So let's grab the 50 volt 47 out of the bag here. I got a cap kit handy. And where are you at? My lovely, where are you at? Actually, it's grammatically incorrect to say where are you at. You just say where are you? Because where are you at and where are you is the same thing. Like, where's the remote at? It's right before the at. That's where the remote is. Anyway. With me, you don't just get chassis repair, you get grammatical lessons as well. All right, so positive is here, negative goes this way. Did I not clear that hole? I bet you I didn't clear that hole. I didn't clear that hole. Gosh darn it. There we go. All right, so that cap is in, just like so. And now let's finish this up here. So we need to, what we can do is bend that over slightly and then bend this back. Bend that way, fold it back on itself, and then go like that. So we're going to end up something like that. And we don't need all of this extra, so let's get rid of that and bend that down like so. And we'll need to, I want to do that first. So let's do that first. Let's do this first. Let's not bridge it. How about that? Okay, we got that done. Let's make sure it's secure. And it is. Now let's do this. And there we go. I think that'll be okay. And as a matter of fact, let's go ahead and do that. And I think that's a valid repair there. I think it'll work. So let's grab the multimeter. See how bad all this looks? I'm gonna have to reflow this whole damn chassis. But the most important thing here is, do we have continuity from here across to here? Yes. We have it to here. It should go right to here. Yep. It should come down to here. Yep. So, yeah, that's all good. So R89 and R101 have been successfully repaired. Shouldn't have any more issues now. This is unfortunate of someone using an iron that's either way too hot or most likely not hot enough, and they damaged the pad trying to dig in there with the iron. So that is really all that I think we need to repair. We fixed the HOT here. We fixed the HOT, we fixed R89, R101. I think that's everything that we needed to repair. So what I want to do here now is let's take a look and see if there's anything else worth noting. Oh, good Lord. Look at this. Look at this. Man, if you don't know what you're doing, I would not be doing it. And what in tarnation is this? Okay, so that might have been touching the positive terminal of that cap, or positive leg. It's not a terminal, it's a leg. Then there's a piece of something laying here. I think that might have been something I did because of how much I cleaned this. Solder joints on the video header pins are all thin and cracked, so that'll be part of the reflow. So, yeah, I don't think there's anything that immediately needs repaired here on camera. So I'm going to do the cap kit, the reflow. If there's anything else I notice, I will show that when I come back. Or if it needs to be shown beforehand, I'll show it beforehand and then continue on. I think I'll go ahead and clean up and cover. So I covered this in the last video previous to this one on the channel where I think it was left underwater. I think this one was left underwater also, but I also showed that I used this dark green car touch-up paint because it has a clear mixed in with it, and it has its own brush, and I like to use this better than the nail polish. Probably the nail polish is probably easier to use, but I just like to use this instead. So I'm going to cut away and do the cap kit, the reflow. If anything that needs shown, I'll come back and cut in and show it, and I'll also get this all painted up as well. And then we can kind of go from there. So let me get that done and come back and we'll see how that turns out. Well, I said I'd come back in if I found something interesting, and I found something interesting. Going through here, and before doing the reflow and the cap kit, I was going through and just checking various places for continuity. And I always do the flyback because this not only does this have the original white knob flyback, but it looks like someone had done some reflow on this and some rework. Like they took the flyback out in an attempt to do some troubleshooting and then put it back in. And I was going through here just verifying I had continuity from the pads to all the points, and I did until I got to here. You see my leads work. If I go to this pad, I touch this one, nothing. I touch here, nothing. If I touch here, good, here, nothing. This pad on the flyback is broken. If I hadn't checked that as I normally do, I wouldn't have found that. So it looks like when they took the flyback off for their troubleshooting, they put it back on, they damaged that pad, which is apparently par for the course with everything else that they've done, whoever tried to work on this in the past. So let's desolder this. I bet you the pad comes right off with my braid. Yep. There you go. There it is. So what we can do now is I can take this pad off of here because we'll reuse it. Oh, sorry about that. Let's take this pad off of here because I want to reuse it. Okay, it's off. Right here it is. But I need to clean this trace off. And half of me wonders if I should just... The rest of these look okay. I had continuity on all the rest of them. I was going to say, half of me wants to remove this solder and check all the traces, but they all had continuity, so it's really just this one that we need to worry. We may end up changing this flyback out anyway. Like, the white knob flyback gets a bad rep because... Or it has a bad rep and it gets a bad rap. There's two ways to say that. because it's the original Flyback from back in 1986. I don't know if you can even see that. So these are the workhorse of the arcade industry for many years, and we're approaching 40 years old for this guy. But I don't like to replace things just for the sake of replacing them. I'm going to leave this in here, and if it's arcing, we'll change it. But if it works and has good focus and screen control and it operates, I'm not going to change it out. So just to put that out there. But all right, so let's see if we can. We'll leave it in here for testing purposes. After we get this rebuilt, we'll leave it in there. So I need to scrape this trace away, and again, my fiberglass pen is empty, so I need to order some refills, and I don't have any at the moment. And let me make sure. I'm a moron, because I do have another one right here. I need to learn to be more vigilant in all sorts of things. Well, okay, I'll put that sandpaper away. That was something I got out for no reason, apparently. All right, so now that that is free, let's grab the pad. Actually, let me flatten it out because somehow I bent it. There we go. We'll put this pad back on here, and I'll show you a little magic trick. Stay there. There you go, fixed. So, little magic trick there for you to show you how you can fix things like that. So, while we're here, I guess I can go ahead and just do these again. This may end up coming right back off, but I want to go ahead and hit these up here. That was odd. Why is that bubbling? What the heck? Never seen a pad bubble like that before. That was weird. Okay, well, I wanted to show that on camera, so now I'll cut away and keep going, and anything else I find I'll show. If not, when I come back, I'll have all this painted and covered, and then the cap kit and the reflow and the cleanup and everything. So let's see. You know, I guess like I say it every time, let's see how that goes, but I'll get that work done and come back and we'll see what it looks like. And there we have it, all reflowed, all repaired, cap kit installed, everything back together, reflowed the header pins on the remote board, hooked it up. I found out that the ground wire that was about to break off from here was actually the wire that runs to the frame, so I had to clean off the corrosion on the connector and put the screw in there. I had to put a screw in here for the heatsink because it was loose. The neck board, I was able to repair that broken pin on that transistor. I was able to scrape it scrape it away, or scrape all of the tarnish and oxidation off of the two pieces and solder that little middle tab back together, so that's good. I got everything on the neck board all cleaned up. I got all of the pots wiped back and forth and set to center for nominal position. I got the neck socket replaced. I got a new ground wire installed for the DAG because the actual DAG wire that runs to the ground was missing completely. That's what I thought. This wire here was the DAG. It's actually this wire here. I had to add a wire because it was missing. What else? I think that's about it, except that I didn't notice until I was putting these wires back on that I mentioned before that are wrapped around the ferrite core here. I didn't notice because the wires were blocking it, but with the wires removed, I noticed that the actual traces are cut. The traces here are completely cut. There's one, and let's see, there's 2. So somebody completely cut through the traces. Is that required? Is that part of the mod? Is that normal? I want to turn this on and see what it does in this configuration, because like I say, I've never seen this in person before. I want to see what the image looks like, what kind of heater glow we get, how bright the image is like this. If this doesn't work, or we don't have any heater or raster or nothing like that, I'm going to take these wires off and patch those cuts and traces and see what we get at that point. But I want to see what happens with this hooked up like this. This is fascinating. First time I've seen this ever in person. So, yeah, and I did not have a spare little plastic thing here that normally goes there, so I just put a zip tie there to keep these secure for the power wires, so that's done as well. So everything is basically complete. We're ready to throw it on the tube and test it the way that it is and see what happens. I'm going to use my my 2 amp circuit breaker here in case something is still wrong. We don't want to blow up a fuse for no reason. And again, like I mentioned before, the part number, this is a 2 amp fuse. I'm sorry, 2 amp circuit breaker, which acts as a slow blow. And it is part number 7277-2-2. The last number denotes the amp, so 7277-2-3 would be 3 amp, 4 would be 4 amp, so on and so forth. So if you want to get yourself one of these, I'd highly recommend it. It comes in handy for pinball repair and not just arcade chassis stuff, but pinball repair as well. So everything is clean and done on the bottom side. I got all the paint work done for all of the exposed traces, and all cleaned up, and cap kit and everything is done. We got all of our repairs complete and everything like that. But I do want to mention one thing. I talked about how R101 should read about 4.5 in circuit, 4.5 k ohm in circuit, and we were reading 6.5, which is what it's supposed to read out of circuit because it was out of circuit. So now with it actually in circuit, we should read about 4.5 again, and we can't get a decent reading on it. There you go. Look at that. 4.5, 6, 7, perfect. So there you go. I wanted to point that out. All right. So now with all this done, let's get it on a tube and try it. And I just want to see, A, will it power on? B, if it does power on, what kind of image we get, because I'm sure there's going to be some other type of problem. I didn't find anything else wrong. There weren't any other broken traces or anything like that. Here is the old neck socket that had the splayed open focus thing there, so that's garbage. So will it power on? If it does, what will it look like? Are we going to have any other problems besides, well, the fuse being out and all the other issues? Is there going to be another problem that we don't know about yet? Will it power on is another problem we're going to have, and does it work with these traces cut and these wires on there? I don't know why they would do that, or why that would be part of a mod or something. I think, you know, in the past I've seen pictures of this. I don't recall the traces being cut, but I could be wrong. So anyway, with all this done, let's get it on a tube, just turn it on and see what happens. Okay, all hooked up. Like I say, if this does work and operate with the original flyback here, I am not going to replace it, because if it does operate and work, there's no reason to replace it, because there's no guarantee the replacement would be any better or last longer. So we'll see if it works. If it does work and it gives us good focus, I'll leave it in there. And we're sitting kind of precariously on a Henrix MTC900E manual, because this is a U5000 tube, and I don't have the 7000 doesn't sit in the frame quite right. So we're just using a insulator here with this manual. TPG is hooked up, so in case it does operate and work, we'll go ahead and turn it on. And we have our anode, neck, yoke, ground, power, video, and remote all hooked up, ready to go. So let's see if it turns on and operates. If it does, what we get, especially with this funky little mod here. So fingers crossed. 1, 2, 3. What in the world? The flyback just made a poof sound, like poof. I don't know if that came through on the audio. Let's try this again. Well, it does work, and holy crap. Yeah. Super bright. Well, it does work. That's interesting. Let's try black level. I don't know which. Let's put that in the middle here. That's middle. Contrast middle. Brightness middle. Like, see, you saw how freaking bright that was almost immediately. How bright that was. That's what this mod does. makes it super bright for a tube that's super dim. I want to leave it like this and see what we can do with adjustments, and then remove it and see if it's darker, because I'll bet it is. So let's start by turning the screen pot all the way down. That was only about 1/8 of a turn up, so we'll turn about 1/8 of a turn back up. Let's see what happens with that. So all the color pots are centered, brightness contrast is centered, and black level is centered, and flyback is about 1/8 up. Let's see what that does. Ooh. Oh, did you hear that? The flyback went poof and started making that. I'm going to have to change that out. I'm going to have to just change it out, because that's weird. So now we don't get anything. So if I turn up the brightness, okay, that's brightness all the way up. Oh yeah, that flyback is popping. Pop, locking, and dropping. And we don't, it appears we only have red. We, whoa, hold on there, pal. That, that flyback is not happy. It's popping. But we only have red? That can't be right. We turn up the blue here. Yeah, we have no blue. Well, and then we have no green. Oh, we do. Oh, that flyback is not happy. Yeah, red appears to be the only color we have. So we only have red. And we need to make sure those color pots aren't bad. We only have red. And that flyback is popping and poofing and not good. I can hear it. I don't know if you can listen to it. It is not happy. So I think what I want to do is turn it off. I'll have to change that flyback out, undo this little mod. I don't want to have to do that, but that's what that is. That is a mod for making the image brighter on a tube that is getting weak. So let me remove that flyback, put a new one in, undo that mod, fix those traces that were cut, and then kind of see where we're at and try and troubleshoot this only red issue. So let me do that and I'll come right back. All right, old flyback is out and the new flyback is installed. And I went ahead and redid the mod. There you go, focus up. I redid the mod because I don't want to run this without the mod. I'm not sure what it does. You know, in hindsight, I should probably not run this without the mod because there is a capacitor on the bottom of the chassis that's soldered to C36 that's not normally there. And I think it might be part of this mod, and I don't want to run this. I don't know what it'll do if I remove it, and I don't want to damage something. So because it was there originally, I'm going to leave it that way. I don't know if this has been modified to require that. Those traces being cut, I'm worried that if I try and remove the mod and patch those traces, something might happen. So I'm just going to leave it the way that it was when I got it. If it works, it works. Then I'm not sure what that mod does. If somebody out there knows what this mod is, post down in the comments and we can all learn something together. But it turns out that there was also a broken trace on the green and the blue transistors. The red one had the broken leg that I repaired, but it also, green and blue had a broken trace on one of the pads I didn't find during my inspection. So that's why I'm pretty sure we have no red or blue because they were just wide open. So I patched those, got the new flyback in with the mod. So let's see what it does now if we have our colors, if there's any difference to what we had. And hopefully there's no cracking and popping and poofing off of this one that the old one was doing. So let's see, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and I've reset the TPG, so we should be back on the main screen here. Yes, blue, we have blue at least. Do we have RGB? Yes, we do. But we're super wide, super wide. Whew. Why are we super wide? The width coil appears to be not all the way down, but down enough to where it's so wide, I don't think that'll make a difference. It may be something we have to change out. So this is a U5000. It's not necessarily 100% compatible with the K7000. With this having the mods that are on it, I don't know. It may be less wide on a 7000 yoke. We may end up having to change out the width cap because somebody may have changed it in the past, although it didn't look like it, to retrofit it to work on a different tube. I don't know, but it looks like we're super wide. If we go, let's go to the crosshatch pattern. Yeah, let's do H position. Oh, so there's a whole nother grid and a half on the left and a whole nother grid and a half on the right. So we are way too wide. But that's not something that can't be solved with a higher rating of C38. A higher rating of C38 will shrink it, and a lower rating of C38 will increase it. So that's no big deal. We can take care of that later. That's going to be outside the scope of this video. I'm not really too worried about it being this wide, because like I say, this is not a dedicated 7000 yoke, and with this mod here and that extra capacitor on the bottom, so I'll bet you 100% that capacitor on the bottom of the board that's attached to C36, the safety cap, I'll bet you that's what's causing this super wide image, and it's there for a reason. I don't want to run it without it, so I'll have to probably just put a different C38 in there to decrease the width and run this on a regular 7000 yoke to see how much wider or less wide it is. And looking at the, I don't have any way to look down there at the, let me see if I can, let's see if we can just pull this over a bit and take a look. Yeah, that's pretty far down there. I don't know, it's not, there's not going to be enough travel on there to I guarantee you, there's not going to be enough travel down on that thing to decrease this at all. I'm pretty sure down is decrease and up is increase. So, I mean, we can test that. Let's see here. We know we're too wide right now, so let's turn this off. And let's slide this over. And let's go up with it. Because up is wide. I may have this backwards. Maybe it's just simply adjusted too far down. Okay, now you can see that core sticking out there. Right there. So let's see if that changed anything. Okay. And still secure and safe. All right, here we go. Let's see if that... No, that made it even wider, as I thought. Okay, so we're just going to have to change out that C38. So no big deal. Okay, well, we have a repaired, functional, working K7000. I will do the necessary burn-in after I replace that C38 and shrink the width a bit. But before I do that, I'm going to actually grab a real, actual K7000 tube and yoke to make sure that it's not a yoke incompatibility issue with this U5000. Assuming that it's not, I'll get that C38 changed out and all that jazz. But we have successfully resurrected another K7000. I am still not really sure what this mod is, so comment down below if you know what that mod is and what it does and why the cap's on the bottom. I know that that cap is normally on the bottom in some mods, but I've never seen it that I recall attached to C36. Usually it's attached to coming off a flyback pad, but anyway, yeah, what we have? We had we had bad caps, wrong rating of caps installed. We had a bad neck socket. We had a whole bunch of bad solder pads. We had 2 broken traces on the color transistors, a busted pin on the color transistor. I'd caused that. We had the missing fuse. We had all kinds of other stuff. A lot of bad pads and solder traces and joints and everything. So that all being said, thanks for watching. Hopefully you learned something. I really appreciate it. Like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell notification so you stay up to date when new stuff comes out. And another successful... Okay, guys, I was about to say another successful K7000 repair, but 5 minutes after I turned the camera off, I was letting the monitor run for a burn-in, and all of a sudden I heard a snap, and the monitor shut off, the fuse blew, the HOT was shorted, and the HOT heatsink was scalding hot. I mean, you could, 5 feet away from the monitor, you could smell the heat and feel the heat coming off of that heatsink. That HOT was, and the whole heatsink area was burning hot. And that is indicative of the high voltage being way too high. Now, I don't have a high voltage probe, so I couldn't show you here, but
the high voltage was screaming on this thing. When we first turned it on, if you listen to the power up, the high voltage energization sounds really loud, like over energetic. I didn't really pick up on that the first time, but going back and looking at it now, it was way too loud. So the high voltage was screaming loud, and it burned up the heatsink, and it destroyed the HOT, blew the fuse, all that. So I had to put a new fuse in there, new HOT, and continue troubleshooting as to what would cause that. And it turns out that I needed to add a second capacitor. There was a capacitor on the bottom of the board that was keeping the high voltage at bay, but there should have been two. And I didn't realize that until it was too late like this. And whoever did the work on this thing must have butchered it to a point where they took off that other capacitor, never put it back on, or I really don't know what the situation was, but I ended up finding the problem, finding the solution, getting this all fixed up, and I'll go over that with you right now.
Okay, so it's the next day here, and as I told you on the voiceover, we had some issues, and I just about lost my mind on this, trying to figure it out. The long story short here is that I removed the original C36 width cap, because this is the four-leg single cap, and I did the mod to modify it to two individual ones, a C36 and a C69. You can see that now we have two caps in there, a C36 and a C69, whereas originally we had the single individual four-leg C36. And to do that, you just simply put the two caps in there, and you have to add a jumper across here and a jumper across there. After doing that, that solved the issue of the too much high voltage, burning up the heatsink and burning up the HOT. And that also solved the issue of having to physically mount capacitor to the bottom of the board. But then I still had the issue of the image being super wide, way too wide. So I removed the original 0.394 width cap C38, and I put a 0.564. Yes, a 0.564, and that brought it in a little bit, but not much at all. I mean, it was, you know, how do I judge this? So if we had a scale of 1 to 10, the width was like at a 10, way off the edge, way off the edge. And I put the 0.564 in there, and it brought it from way off the edge to slightly less way off the edge. And there really wasn't much else I could do. I added like 3 or 4 more capacitors in parallel with the 0.564. I put another 0.564 and a 0.447 and a 0.394, and that brought it in a little bit more, but it still hung off the sides about 1 inch on each side. So it wasn't quite good enough. So I thought, okay, well, I took off all the other caps and just left the 0.564 in there. I thought, well, let me put in, maybe the inductance of this thing is different from what it should be. This is a 9 alpha 2838-001, and if you look at this other 7000 I have here, this is a K7000 25-inch also, but it's a 001 alpha. So I don't know if the inductance is different, but I thought, okay, well, I've exhausted all of their efforts. I didn't want to leave four width caps in parallel on this thing. That just looks terrible. And I don't know what that would do as far as longevity-wise, so I just got kind of a wild hair and thought, well, what if I just put a 19-inch width coil in there? So I was thinking, okay, if the 19-inch is a lot smaller, it's going to have a much different inductance on the width coil. So I put a 19-inch, I stole a 19-inch width coil off of a spare parts 19-inch chassis, and I threw that in there. So after doing that, along with the 0.564, I now had a nice, not shrunken, but I was able to adjust the width, like, I don't know, 1.5 inches of black on this side, 1.5 inches of black on this side. As I drove it, if I drove it down, it shrunk the image. As I drove it up, it increased, so I can go off the raster. I can bring it, not off the raster, I can go off the sides. I can bring the raster off the sides of the screen. I can bring the raster in the sides of the screen, about 1.5 inches inside, 1.5 inches outside. So with the 19-inch width coil in there, I have absolutely perfect factory spec adjustment of width. So that's with the 0.564. If I put the 0.33, if I put 394 back in there, then it's too wide again. So I had to change out the single 4-leg C36 to an individual C36 and C69 with the 2 jumpers here. Then I had to put in a 19-inch width coil and a .564 width coil, or width cap. Oh, I'm just frustrated and flustered, as you can tell. I can't even talk. I can't talk normally, but this is extremely bad. So after all that, it now works absolutely perfectly. We have good high voltage. It's right where it should be. The heatsink barely even gets lukewarm, maybe slightly past room temperature. You can leave your hand on it all day. It's not even uncomfortable. It's like a nice warm shower. So it's perfect. There's this, for all intents and purposes now, is absolutely fantastic in every way, shape, and form. So I need to do a little bit of cleanup here on the rework that I did, and then I'll put it on the tube and we can test it, and I'll show you what I mean. So I've said it before and I'll say it again, that this is, I don't know what this mod is for, but because it works with it in there, I'm just going to leave it. So I don't know what'll happen if I remove it, and since I'm at a point now where this is working just fine, I don't want to damage something by taking it off of there, so we're going to leave it. So with all of this done, yeah, I don't know if they originally had the cap in the wrong spot. I didn't want to have a cap on the bottom here and a cap on the top up here on D18, so I just went ahead and did the mod to put the 2 individual ones in there, and basically that does the same thing. So by you can put the cap across these 2 legs of C36, and the other cap you put across D18 and this leg of C38, and that in essence does the exact same thing that I just did down here by putting these jumpers in here and putting the 2 individual caps. So with just the single cap in here, with just that single cap right here across C36, it was burning up HOT and the heatsink because it needed more capacitance on the circuit. That's why when you add the secondary cap in here that normally would be across D18 and C38, that brings the high voltage back to normal and this doesn't overheat anymore. And by taking this out of there and doing it this way, it's just a much cleaner install. So the only problem with doing that was I ended up with a much, much wider image, and changing this out along with this fixed that problem. So I'll get this on a dedicated K7000 tube and yoke, and we can test it, and you can see for yourself that this is now a 100% functioning chassis with no problems. And I'm just, I've never seen one like this before, and the reason, well, I think the reason that we can't put that capacitor and that diode in there that normally is there on other chassis is because this has a different this is a different PCB with different circuitry, so you can't just drop that diode and that capacitor in there. It's going to cause problems, so it's not going to work if you put that in there. I'm not sure if I don't recall if I mentioned that or not. Normally there's a capacitor and a diode in there when you have issues like this, like some of these that have this capacitor, not this one, but some of these that have the capacitor on the bottom of the board have that extra capacitor and diode in there over here. And the last time I had this problem where I had the too much of high voltage burning up the heatsink, I put that capacitor and that diode in there and it fixed the problem, but I think that was a 19-inch. So regardless, it's not needed on this one. It's a different design board. I believe it's an early revision of 1986, so those components aren't there. But after changing these out, it's 100% operational. So let me get on the tube. Enough jibber jabber and long story long here. I think I started by saying long story short, but it's long story long now. So let me get this tested. You'll see it working, and we'll call it good. Okay, so here we have the chassis on a 7000 tube, 7000 yoke, a correct 7000 setup. And we're going to be running the Mortal Kombat PCB here just for to show you how well it's working now and everything. So we have the 19-inch with coil installed. We have the .564 C38 installed, and with that coupled with the dual C36 and C69 with the jumper mod, this thing is running nice and cool and works great. So let's turn this on. 1, 2, 3. Okay, nice quiet energization and good high voltage and perfect width on both sides. We are no longer too wide. Linearity is perfect. Everything is adjusted. It's working absolutely beautifully. So I don't have an answer as to how this ended up in the poor state that it was in.
I just can't say. So lots of issues, but after solving everything, it's going to be good to go. So the longevity, as far as longevity goes, I don't know if having the 19-inch width coil in there and the .564 C38 and the two individual C36 and C69, I don't know if longevity-wise we'll have any issues, but I'm going to say probably not. So I know inductance is a factor, but I'm not honestly quite worried about it. So glorious. So yeah, you can see here if I adjust horizontal position this way, there's the black. If I adjust it this way, well, there's the black, but it's too wide at the moment. No, let's start a game here. Let's coin this up. Start a game. Pick Kano. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, yeah, so you can see here that we've got plenty of space between this side, and we'll see right there. And I mean, that's perfect. Fantastic. We don't have any fold over. Linearity is perfect. Everything is great. So yeah, just quite a headache trying to get this one done. Oh man, I tell you, it just seems like every one that I work on, it just gets more progressively interesting and interesting and interesting. And this thing is running ice cold now. I mean, it's barely even room temperature. I'd say it's probably, 75 degrees. So adding in that extra high voltage cap appears to have fixed the issue of the high voltage being too high and burning up this heatsink and the HOT. So I still do not know what the purpose of this mod is, but I left it intact because obviously it was put in there for some reason. But and purely curiosity's sake, I'd like to remove it and see what happens, but I don't want to damage anything, so I'm just going to leave it. It runs fine with it in there, so there's no reason to remove it or mess with it because it runs fine that way with it installed. So there you have it, all fixed. Here's the original C36 and the original width coil. So, like I say, I know inductance is a factor, but with this one in there, driven all the way down, it's way, 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 way too wide. And if I draw it up, it gets wider and wider. So with the 19-inch one in there, as I draw it down, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So the 19-inch one appears to be the correct inductance for whatever is going on here with this, whereas the 25-inch one is not. So I don't have an answer, but got it solved. As far as longevity goes, like I say, I do not know. But I'll run it for, at least 12 hours today and 12 hours tomorrow and see what happens. If anything goes kablooey, I will make note of it on the next video, the number 4 Repair-A-Thon 7000, which is up next. So I'll get cracking on that one. But for now, we're good to go. So there you have it. Thanks very much for watching. I appreciate it. Hopefully you learned something. Like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you hit that bell notification, and we'll see you next time.